Because if we don't learn from this disaster, we're doomed to repeat it. And frankly, I'm not sure the country can survive another round of Trump's economic genius, or whatever comes after it. We're already seeing the United States Court of International Trade ruling that Trump overstepped his authority in imposing tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, but the Court of Appeals granted a stay, so these destructive policies remain in effect, while the legal challenges work their way through the system. Democratic representatives are trying to force votes to end Trump's national emergencies that justify these tariffs, but they're being blocked by the Republican congressional majority. J.D. Vance cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate to uphold the emergency underpinning the Liberation Day tariffs. So even when the courts say Trump is acting illegally, even when Congress could stop this madness, the Republican Party is choosing to protect Trump's destructive policies over the economic well-being of American families. The next time someone promises you easy solutions to complex problems, be skeptical, ask questions, demand details. The next time someone tells you they can magically make everything cheaper without any trade-offs, remember that there's no such thing as a free lunch in economics. The next time someone with a history of bankruptcies promises to fix the economy, maybe consider voting for someone else who actually understands how economics work. Look, I get it. People were frustrated with inflation under Biden. They were angry about grocery prices and gas costs and housing expenses. Those feelings were valid, and those concerns were real. But the solution to inflation was never to elect someone who would implement policies that make inflation worse. The solution was never to trust someone who lies as easily as breathing, and who has spent his entire career enriching himself at other people's expense. The data shows us exactly what happened and why. According to Bankrate's analysis of government statistics, although wages increased by 17.4% between January 2021 and June 2024, prices rose 20% over the same period. There was a real gap between wage growth and price increases that hurt working families. But instead of addressing this gap with smart policy, Trump has made it worse with destructive tariffs that economists predict will cost families thousands of dollars per year. Even with wage growth starting to outpace inflation under Biden, Bankrate forecasted that the gap wouldn't fully close until the second quarter of 2025. American consumers remembered their money going further before the pandemic, and they voted accordingly. But they confused correlation with causation. They thought Trump was responsible for the good economy of 2018-2019, when in reality, he inherited a strong economy from Obama and then mismanaged the pandemic response so badly that it crashed. This isn't about party politics, folks. This is about basic competence versus incompetence. This is about choosing leaders who understand that governing is hard work, not a reality TV show designed to generate ratings and controversy. This is about picking people who tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, instead of the lies you want to hear. This is about understanding that when 73% of Americans expect prices to surge under Trump's tariffs, and 57% oppose those tariffs, maybe we should listen to the experts instead of the guy who thinks trade wars are easy to win. This is about recognizing that when economists across the political spectrum agree that certain policies will hurt families, we should take those warnings seriously. So to those Trump voters who are finally waking up to reality, welcome to the resistance. It's never too late to start paying attention to actual policy instead of campaign rhetoric. It's never too late to demand better from your elected officials. And it's never too late to vote for leaders who actually know what they're doing, instead of con artists who are really good at telling you what you want to hear. But here's the reality check. Admitting you made a mistake isn't enough. We need action. We need you to call your representatives and demand they stop enabling Trump's destructive policies. We need you to show up to town halls and city council meetings and school board meetings. We need you to engage with the political process beyond just voting every 4 years and then checking out. Because if we don't change course soon, this economic disaster is just the beginning. Trump is already threatening 100% tariffs on Russia if there's no peace deal with Ukraine within 50 days. He's talking about separate tariffs on semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and critical minerals. He's considering pulling out of international organizations and trade agreements that have benefited American workers and consumers for decades. The man is systematically destroying America's economic relationships with the rest of the world, And he's doing it while claiming it will make America wealthy again. It's like setting your house on fire and claiming it will keep you warm. Technically true in the short term, but ultimately catastrophic. And here's the thing that should terrify every American. This is only the beginning. We're 6 months into a 4-year term. If Trump's policies are already causing this much economic damage, this much international retaliation, this much market volatility, imagine what things will look like in 2 years. Imagine what the country will look like when he's done implementing his full agenda. The choice is yours. Keep supporting the policies that are making your life harder, or start demanding the competent governance you deserve. But don't say nobody warned you, because we've been trying to tell you this whole time, and you just weren't listening. We've been pointing to the economic data, the expert analysis, the historical precedents, and the predictable consequences. Maybe now you'll finally start paying attention. Maybe now you'll realize that elections have consequences, and those consequences affect your daily life in real and tangible ways. Maybe now you'll understand that voting isn't about sending a message or sticking it to the establishment, or owning the libs. It's about choosing the people who will actually make your life better, not worse. The question is, will you learn from this mistake, or are you doomed to repeat it? Because frankly, the rest of us are tired of saying, "I told you so." We'd much rather work together to fix the mess we're all living in now. We'd rather focus on solutions than recriminations, on building up rather than tearing down, on competent governance rather than chaos and destruction. But that requires honest acknowledgement of what went wrong and why. It requires admitting that maybe, just maybe, the experts who warned about these consequences weren't part of some deep state conspiracy. They were just people who understand economics and public policy trying to prevent exactly the disaster we're living through now. It requires recognizing that when someone tells you they have easy solutions to complex problems, they're probably lying. When someone promises you everything and asks for nothing but your vote, they're probably a con artist. When someone's entire political career is built on grievance and resentment, rather than actual policy accomplishments, they're probably not the right person to solve your problems. The choice is yours. But choose wisely this time, because we might not get another chance to get it right. The damage Trump is doing to America's economy, our international relationships, our democratic institutions, and our social fabric might take decades to repair. And that's assuming we can actually get competent leadership back in place before it's too late. So what's it going to be? Are you going to keep supporting the policies that are making everything more expensive, while the guy who promised to fix it golfs at Mar-a-Lago? Are you going to keep believing the lies while your grocery bills go up and your real wages go down? Are you going to keep voting for chaos and incompetence while hoping for different results? Or are you finally ready to admit that maybe, just maybe, we need leaders who actually know what they're doing? Leaders who listen to experts who understand the complexities of governing, who tell you the truth even when it's hard to hear. Leaders who put the country first instead of their own ego and bank account? The choice is yours. But whatever you decide, own it. Because the rest of us are living with the consequences of your choices too. And we're all paying the price for this collective delusion that competence doesn't matter, that expertise is elitist, and that governing is easy enough that any reality TV star can do it. Wake up. Pay attention, demand better, because this is your country too, and it's time to start acting like it matters to you whether it succeeds or fails. Time to start acting like you care about more than just scoring political points or sticking it to the other side. Time to start acting like the future actually matters. Americans regret voting for Trump. Everything has gone up. Well. Here we are, folks. 6 months into Trump's second term, and guess what? The very people who voted for him are starting to realize they might have made a tiny little mistake. And by tiny, I mean catastrophic. We're talking Titanic meets iceberg levels of disaster here. Remember all those campaign promises. We're going to make America wealthy again. We're going to make America affordable again. We have to get the prices down. I'll fix it on day one. Yeah, about that. Turns out the only thing Trump fixed was his own bank account, and the bank accounts of his wealthy cronies. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening in America right now. Because spoiler alert, it's not pretty, it's not what his voters signed up for, And it's about to get a whole lot worse. We're living through the most predictable economic disaster in modern American history, and yet somehow millions of people are acting shocked that the guy who bankrupted casinos, doesn't understand economics. But before we dive into this beautiful mess, let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer audacity of what we're witnessing. Trump literally campaigned on being the anti-inflation candidate, won an election because people were angry about high prices, and then immediately implemented the most inflationary policies since the 1930s. It's like hiring an arsonist to be your fire chief, and then acting surprised when your house burns down. So Trump won this election primarily on one issue: inflation. And let me be crystal clear about just how decisive this issue was. 3/4 of voters, 75%, said inflation had caused them moderate or severe hardship over the past year. 45% said they were worse off than 4 years ago. According to AP VoteCast surveys, about 9 in 10 voters were worried about grocery costs, 8 in 10 about healthcare, housing, and gas prices. These weren't abstract policy concerns. These were kitchen table issues affecting real families every single day. When people went to the grocery store and saw eggs costing 3 times what they used to, when they looked at their rent going up month after month, when they filled up their gas tank and winced at the total, that's when they decided they needed change. Trump understood this pain, and he weaponized it brilliantly. He told people exactly what they wanted to hear. I will fix your grocery bills. I will bring down prices. I will make everything affordable again. And millions of Americans desperate for relief believed him. They looked at Trump and thought, hey, this guy will fix our grocery bills. They remembered the pre-COVID economy of 2018-2019, when prices were lower and their paychecks seemed to go further. They conveniently forgot about the pandemic recession, the supply chain crisis, and the global inflation that followed. They just remembered that things felt more affordable under Trump before, so surely he could make them affordable again. Fast forward to today, and we have Navigator Research dropping some absolutely delicious polling data that should make every Trump voter question their life choices. 1 in 4 Trump voters, that's 25%, either regret voting for him or are disappointed by his performance. Let that sink in for a moment. 1/4 of his own voters are already having buyer's remorse, and we're not even halfway through year 1 of this disaster. But here's the really juicy part. Among voters who identify as moderates, 47% said they regret voting for Trump or are disappointed by his early performance. Among Trump voters who don't identify as MAGA cultists, 43% feel the same way. These aren't hardcore partisans we're talking about. These are the swing voters who actually decide elections. But here's the kicker that perfectly encapsulates the buyer's remorse. An independent voter from Michigan told researchers, I had never voted for a candidate in a long time. I should have voted third party. I just wasted my vote at this point because I'm not happy. I'm scared that we're going to become a dictatorship. Scared of a dictatorship. From the guy you voted for? Chef's kiss. The lack of self-awareness is truly stunning. It's like marrying someone and then being shocked to discover they have all the red flags you completely ignored during the dating process. Now, let's talk about why these voters are regretting their choice, because the reasons are both predictable and infuriating. Remember that whole bring prices down thing? Well, Trump has done the exact opposite with the enthusiasm of a bull in a china shop. He's implemented what he dramatically calls Liberation Day tariffs. Because nothing says liberation like making everything more expensive for working families while you golf at Mar-a-Lago. On April the 2nd, 2025, Trump declared his very own Liberation Day, and I kid you not, he called it one of the most important days in American history, and our Declaration of Economic Independence. The audacity is breathtaking. This man has the self-awareness of a brick and the economic understanding of a toddler with a credit card. This wasn't just any ordinary policy announcement. Trump imposed a universal 10% tariff on virtually all imports from foreign countries, plus additional reciprocal tariffs ranging up to 49% on dozens of countries. But wait, there's more. He also implemented 25% tariffs on foreign cars, 50% on steel and aluminum, and promised even more tariffs on semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and critical minerals. Let me break down what this actually means for regular Americans, because Trump sure as hell won't tell you the truth about it. When economists talk about tariffs, They're talking about taxes. Not taxes on foreign countries. Taxes on American consumers. Every single one of these tariffs gets passed along to you and me in the form of higher prices. But Trump, in his infinite wisdom, keeps telling people that foreign countries pay these tariffs. It's like claiming that when you pay sales tax at Target, somehow China is the one writing the check. The level of economic illiteracy is staggering, and yet millions of Americans bought into this fantasy. Economists are estimating these tariffs will cost the average American household $5,000 per year. $5,000. That's more than most people's rent. That's a vacation. That's a car payment. That's gone, just like that, thanks to Trump's trade war tantrum. But wait, it gets worse. The Center for Strategic and International Studies ran the numbers, and they found that Trump's tariffs will reduce U.S. GDP by 1%, which equals about $300 billion in lost economic output. Prices will rise by 9.5%, while wages will only increase by 8.6%. In plain English, your paycheck won't keep up with the cost of living. Again, Goldman Sachs found that 49% of these tariff costs are falling directly on American consumers, 39% on businesses, and only 12% on foreign exporters. So much for making other countries pay, right? The irony here is absolutely delicious. Trump campaigned against inflation, won the election because people were angry about high prices, and then immediately implemented policies that economists universally agree will make inflation worse. The Peterson Institute for International Economics, these are serious economists, not partisan hacks, found that Trump's policies would drive inflation to at least 6% by 2026. By 2028, consumer prices would be 20% higher. Remember, this is from the guy who promised to bring prices down. And here's where it gets really rich, folks. Trump has now twice said that lowering prices isn't actually his top priority. After winning an election on that exact promise, he told NBC's Meet the Press, "I won on the border and I won on groceries," and then proceeded to focus on everything except groceries. It's like a surgeon telling you they'll fix your heart and then spending the entire operation working on your toenails. Instead of addressing the cost of living crisis that got him elected, what has Trump focused on in his first few months? Culture war nonsense. Dismantling the federal workforce, firing Justice Department staff who investigated him, asking senior FBI officials to resign, starting fights with career civil servants. You know, the really important stuff when families can't afford to put food on the table. When reporters asked him recently about visiting the site of a tragic plane crash, something any normal president would do to show leadership and compassion, Trump responded, "I have a plan to visit, not the site. Because you tell me, what's the site? The water? You want me to go swimming?" This is the level of callousness and incompetence we're dealing with. But the real tragedy here isn't just Trump's broken promises. It's how utterly, completely, ridiculously predictable this all was. Every mainstream economist warned that his tariff policies would be inflationary. Every expert said his mass deportation plans would drive up labor costs by removing workers from essential industries. Every analysis showed that his tax cuts would worsen the deficit and put upward pressure on prices. Did Trump voters listen? Of course not. They preferred to believe the fantasies of a man who bankrupted multiple casinos, over the warnings of actual economists who have spent their careers studying these issues. It's like choosing a fortune teller over a meteorologist to predict the weather, and then being shocked when you get caught in a hurricane. And now we're seeing the consequences play out in real time like a slow-motion economic train wreck. The stock market crashed when Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs. The Dow dropped over 1,700 points before he partially backed down and hit the panic button. The S&P 500 lost 4.6% in the first quarter of 2025, marking the worst quarter in 2.5 years. The Nasdaq plummeted 10.4%. Consumer confidence hit a 12-year low because people are expecting higher prices and economic chaos. Let's talk about what these tariffs actually mean for regular families, because this isn't some abstract economic theory. This is your daily life getting more expensive. That 25% tariff on foreign cars? Good luck buying an affordable vehicle when the cost of a Honda Civic goes up by thousands of dollars overnight. The tariffs on food imports? Hope you like paying more for bananas, coffee, and basically anything that doesn't grow in your backyard. The tariffs on manufacturing inputs? Every product that uses imported materials, which is basically everything, just got more expensive. A car dealership owner in Pennsylvania told CNN that the vehicle price increases would hit consumers so fast and hard that even better-off clients would not be able to keep up with the spike. Think about that for a second. Even rich people can't afford Trump's policies. If wealthy Americans are struggling with these price increases, what chance do working families have? And here's the most infuriating part. Trump keeps doubling down like a degenerate gambler who thinks the next bet will fix everything. When his initial Liberation Day announcement caused markets to crash and foreign countries to threaten retaliation, did he admit he made a mistake? Did he reconsider his approach? No. He raised tariffs on China to 125%. Because when you're in a hole, the solution is obviously to keep digging with a bigger shovel. The man imposed tariffs so severe that even his own economic advisors were reportedly arguing with him behind closed doors. Bloomberg reported that senior counselor Peter Navarro was pushing for even more extreme measures, while Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett were trying to talk him down from the ledge. Trump, in his infinite wisdom, chose to listen to the guy who thinks trade wars are easy to win. Meanwhile, other countries aren't just sitting there taking it like punching bags. China has imposed retaliatory tariffs on American exports, specifically targeting agricultural products that hurt Trump-supporting farmers. Canada announced tariffs on over $100 billion of American goods over 21 days. That's nearly $5 billion in retaliation per day. Mexico is preparing its own comprehensive response to protect its automotive industry and other sectors. Trump has managed to start trade wars with our three largest trading partners simultaneously. It's like picking fights with your three biggest customers, and then being surprised when your business suffers. The European Union, Japan, South Korea, they're all preparing retaliatory measures. The Swiss Federation, New Zealand, Australia, countries that have been allies for decades are now treating the United States as an economic adversary. Trump has turned America into a global pariah in the span of a few months. So much for America first, am I right? More like America alone. Several countries have initiated disputes with the World Trade Organization over Trump's tariffs. But here's the kicker. The United States has effectively paralyzed the WTO since 2019 by blocking new appointments to its appellate body. It's like breaking the referee's whistle and then complaining that nobody's calling fouls. On March 4, 2025, the U.S. even notified the WTO that it would suspend contributions to its budget indefinitely. We're not just leaving the table, we're flipping it over and setting it on fire. But here's what really gets me. Trump voters are acting surprised by all this. Surprised. As if Trump didn't spend his entire first term starting trade wars with China, Canada, Mexico, and Europe. As if he didn't campaign explicitly on implementing the most comprehensive tariff system since the 1930s. As if economists didn't spend months explaining exactly why this would happen and how it would hurt American families. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. These voters wanted lower prices, so they voted for the guy who promised to implement the very policies that economists universally agreed would raise prices. It's like jumping in a pool and being shocked that you got wet, or touching a hot stove and being surprised that it burns. And now we have Trump voters like Teresa Wolf from Florida saying she felt relief after the election, only to find out that everything is getting more expensive and the economic chaos is just beginning. We have Union Democrats who crossed party lines because they wanted someone to stop the inflation, only to get someone who implemented policies that make inflation worse. We have independent voters who thought they were voting for economic competence, and instead got economic vandalism. The National Federation of Independent Business found that small business owners are bearing the brunt of this storm and have no choice but to raise prices because of Trump's tariffs. These are the very small businesses that Trump claims to champion, the mom and pop shops that form the backbone of American communities. But when push comes to shove, Trump's policies are crushing them under the weight of higher costs and economic uncertainty. One small business CEO told reporters, "There's just so many different factors here, and it's a lot of changes all at once. Unfortunately, we're just going to be bearing the brunt of this storm here." He explained that small businesses operate in competitive markets and would have to raise prices due to the costs incurred. There's really no way around it, he said, adding that both consumers and businesses were in for some tough times. ahead. Meanwhile, tariffs have become a much larger part of federal revenue than they've been historically. By July 2025, tariffs had raised $108 billion net revenue in 9 months, compared to $392 billion in corporate tax and $3.648 trillion in income tax. They now comprise 5% of federal revenue compared to 2% historically. But here's the thing. This revenue is coming directly out of American consumers' pockets, not from foreign countries as Trump claims. Let me be crystal clear about what's happening here. Trump sold these voters a lie, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. He promised them cheaper groceries and delivered more expensive everything. He promised them a stronger economy and delivered trade wars and market crashes. He promised them America first and delivered America isolated and economically weakened. The most maddening part is that this was all entirely predictable and preventable. Trump's first presidency should have been a warning. His tariffs then were largely passed on to consumers. His trade war with China hurt American farmers and manufacturers. His economic policies primarily benefited the wealthy while leaving working families behind. The pattern was clear for anyone who cared to look, but somehow millions of Americans convinced themselves that this time would be different. That somehow, the man who spent 4 years proving he doesn't understand basic economics had suddenly become an economic genius. That the guy who presided over the worst jobs crisis since the Great Depression was somehow the right person to handle inflation. The capacity for self-delusion is truly remarkable, and now we're seeing the inevitable consequences play out in slow motion. Inflation is starting to tick back up. Consumer confidence is plummeting as people brace for higher prices. Real wages are falling behind price increases. The very problems that got Trump elected are getting worse under his watch, and we're not even a year into his second term. But let's dig deeper into the human cost of these policies, because behind every economic statistic is a real family struggling to make ends meet. Alex Spangler, a 38-year-old from Westminster, Colorado, voted for Harris, but perfectly captures what working families are going through. She and her partner make decent wages, but they're struggling to save money because of how much they're paying for groceries and other necessities. Even simple trips to the supermarket regularly cost them $20 to $50, leaving little cushion for emergencies. We both make decent wages, but with the way that inflation has increased, it's like our dollar just doesn't go as far, Spangler told NPR. We don't really buy anything extravagant or go out much because of how much we spend on groceries. And this is the reality for millions of American families. They're not asking for luxury, they're just trying to afford the basics. The typical U.S. household now has to spend $1,120 more per month than in January 2021 just to buy the same goods and services, according to Moody's Analytics. Paychecks are up by about the same amount on average, but that means many people must spend all their pay increases just to get by. And remember, these are averages. For many families, wages haven't kept up with inflation at all. Trump flipped multiple counties in Pennsylvania where wages have failed to keep up with prices. These are the very communities that trusted him to make their lives better, and instead, he's making them demonstrably worse. It's not just about the numbers. It's about families having to choose between groceries and gas, between rent and health care, between heating their homes and paying for their kids' school supplies. The most frustrating thing is that we could have avoided all of this economic carnage. We had an alternative. We had a candidate who understood that you don't fight inflation by implementing inflationary policies. We had a choice between competent governance and whatever this disaster is. We had the opportunity to elect leaders who would work to bring down costs through strategic investments, supply chain improvements, and smart economic policy. But enough Americans decided they'd rather vote for the guy who promised them magic solutions over the candidate who promised them hard work and realistic policies. They chose the fantasy over the reality, the con man over the competent public servant, the easy lie over the difficult truth. And now they're living with the consequences. And frankly, so are the rest of us. Here's what I want to say to those Trump voters who are having regrets. And I want you to really listen to this. This is what accountability looks like. This is what happens when you vote based on anger and resentment instead of facts and evidence. This is what you get when you trust a con man who's been lying to you for years, who's been grifting off your fears and frustrations while enriching himself and his cronies. You want to know why everything has gone up? Because you voted for policies that economists warned would make everything go up. You want to know why your grocery bills are higher? Because you voted for tariffs that experts explained would make food more expensive. You want to know why your car payment went up? Because you voted for someone who put a 25% tax on foreign vehicles and bragged about it. You want to know why your small business is struggling? Because you voted for someone who imposed costs on imported materials that small businesses depend on. You want to know why the stock market is volatile? Because you voted for someone who creates chaos and uncertainty as a governing strategy. You want to know why other countries are retaliating against American exports? Because you voted for someone who treats international trade like a reality TV show. The leopards are eating your faces, and you're the ones who voted for the leopards eating people's faces party. You were warned, over and over and over again. Economists warned you. Policy experts warned you. International allies warned you. Hell, even some Republicans warned you. But you didn't want to hear it because the truth was uncomfortable, and the lies were more appealing. But here's the thing, and this is important. It's not too late to learn from this disaster. It's not too late to admit you made a mistake. It's not too late to hold your representatives accountable for the promises they made and broke. It's not too late to start paying attention to actual policy details instead of just campaign slogans and rally chants. Because if we don't learn from this disaster, we're doomed to repeat it. And frankly, I'm not sure the country can survive another round of Trump's economic genius. The next time someone promises you easy solutions to complex problems, be skeptical. The next time someone tells you they can magically make everything cheaper without any trade-offs, ask questions. The next time someone with a history of bankruptcies promises to fix the economy, maybe consider voting for someone else. This isn't about party politics. This is about basic competence. This is about choosing leaders who understand that governing is hard work, not a reality TV show. This is about picking people who tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, instead of the lies you want to hear. So to those Trump voters who are finally waking up to reality, welcome to the resistance. It's never too late to start paying attention. It's never too late to demand better. And it's never too late to vote for leaders who actually know what they're doing. Because if we don't change course soon, this economic disaster is just the beginning. And trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. The choice is yours. Keep supporting the policies that are making your life harder, or start demanding the competent governance you deserve. But don't say nobody warned you, because we've been trying to tell you this whole time, and you just weren't listening. Maybe now you'll finally start paying attention. Maybe now you'll realize that elections have consequences, and those consequences affect your daily life. Maybe now you'll understand that voting isn't about sending a message or sticking it to the establishment. It's about choosing the people who will actually make your life better. The question is, will you learn from this mistake, or are you doomed to repeat it? Because frankly, the rest of us are tired of saying, "I told you so." We'd much rather work together to fix the mess we're all living in now. The choice is yours, but choose wisely this time, because we might not get another chance to get it right.